Hey, our knights. So this is let's see. I'm gonna do the next three chapters. No, 1, 2, 3, 4. So the next 4 chapters, and then one more video left to the end of the story. Excitement. Okay, so chapter 50. Beaten and bruised, we finally made it out of the building. Surprisingly, Master Splinter had driven the shell raiser to our rescue and had parked it several blocks away. Passing many Foot and Kerrang on our way out of the headquarters. But with Shredder gone and one death glare from Chiari, they willingly let us pass. Raphael helped his master, his arm wrapped around the waist of the giant rat, as we made our way to the Shellraiser. Michelangelo and Chiari, though bruised and battered themselves, each put an arm under Leonardo, while April helped Donnie, who was still a little fuzzy from the whack to the head. I had gotten my brother out of the closet. I think he had gone into shock because he just stared blankly ahead, not saying a word, as I gently grabbed his arm and led him outside. My body hurt. I was physically exhausted from the battle. My green skin had brownish bruises all over it from where I had been punched, kicked, or struck with a blunt weapon. Thank heavens for the shell, because without its armored protection, I knew I would not have survived that fight. As we climbed into the massive armored subway car, I looked over to examine my friends. Chiari had a claw mark running from her shoulder all the way down to her bicep. Dog Pound's paws, no doubt. April looked okay, other than her wild, messy red hair, the sign that she had struggled hard when kidnapped. The guys had dark circles under their eyes, and it looked like they hadn't slept. I didn't think about how much has passed while we were in there. Time passes differently when you hover between torture and unconsciousness. How long were we in there? I asked while pushing my mentally out of it brother down onto a seat, finally breaking the silence. Donnie sighed as he slowly eased himself down into the driver's seat. 37 hours. 37 hours? That's a day and a half. We were in there for that long? When you didn't come home or answer my calls after your shows, I began to sense something foul. And when I called April and she didn't respond either, it confirmed my fears. Using the global positioning tracker on my communications device, I found your last known location. The Foot headquarters, grumbled Raphael. But Sensei, you can't even turn on the DVD player. How on earth did you manage to work the tracker? Uttered Donatello in amazement. It is incredible the things one can do when one must, Sensei in his ever-cryptic sayings. Donnie rubbed his head and groaned as he started the engine. Bro, you okay to drive? Mikey, who had been leaning against the back seat of the driver's seat, asked, slightly worried. He did have a point. Donnie shook his head as if brushing something off. Yeah, I'll be okay. Oh, you don't. No, you don't. That's it. He broke... hold on. Okay. He pulled his brother out of the driver's seat and set him down in the passenger. Mikey, what do you think you're doing? That would be keeping us out of an accident, bro. You got clunked pretty hard back there. You're going to be seeing 4 lanes where there's only 2. He strapped his seatbelt on, facial expression just ready for the impending argument. I'm not exactly prime candidate, but does it look like anybody else here is in any better condition than you at the moment? Donnie sent Leo a questioning, slightly terrified look. He was right. I thought to myself as I looked at my battered friends. Trust him, I mouthed silently to Leo. Watch out for pedestrians, and don't forget to use your turn signal, Leo ordered his brother. Turn signal on a subway car? Funny, ironic, and funny. Well, face the Shredder alone and survive. Don't drive the Shellraiser. Wait, no. Let me reread that. Well, face the Shredder alone and survive, and drive the Shellraiser. 2 things on my bucket list in one day. Wow. But I didn't expect them in that order, joked Michelangelo. Roxanne, mumbled my brother, still staring blankly ahead. I quickly morphed and sat next to him, grabbing his hand. Felix, I'm here. It's me. Step out of it. Roxy? He stared at me, confused, but out of his daze. I smiled, my heartwarming smile at his pet name for me. No, it can't be. You're dead. Then he noticed the turtles and jumped out of his seat, pulling me with him and pushing me behind him protectively. What are you guys? His eyes darting around the room at the mutants and the master. He noticed Chiari and April and reached forward and violently jerked them out of their seats, forcing them behind him. Chiari looked pissed and raised her hand to strike my brother. I quickly grabbed it. Don't hurt him. He's in shock, I told her. 4 green aliens and what is that? Mickey Mouse? I see what you're doing here, kidnapping defenseless Earth girls for what? Experiments? Pets? Food? A messed up interspecies harem? He accused. Roth snorted inappropriately at that last part. Inside, a part of me was proud of my brother trying to protect us. Defenseless Earth girls. Gallant to the end, my big brother was. Whoa, dude. Mickey, seriously? Laughed Mikey from the driver's seat. What do you want with us? Yelled my brother. Like lightning, Chiari jabbed 2 fingers in front of the base of his neck, pinching him at mobility nerve, causing him to crumble to the floor. What was that for? I yelled at her. Well, I had to do something, she replied, helping me lift him onto his seat. I sat beside him once again and took his hands into mine. His eyes, the only thing that could still move, following me the whole time. Felix, I paused. Brother, nobody here is going to hurt you. In fact, they just saved you. I'm going to explain this all to you, and it may be very hard to believe or understand. My friend Chiari here is going to release you, but you need to promise to at least listen to me. He couldn't speak, but the way his eyes looked at me clearly stated, okay. I nodded to Chiari, using the same motion again. She undid the nerve. Just tell me what's going on, he begged. First, I explained the turtles in Mickey Mouse, telling him that they are not aliens at all, and explained how they came to be. Then it came time for me to explain myself. I'm Roxanne, but not your Roxanne. His eyebrows furrowed in confusion. I'm from a parallel Earth, almost completely the same as this, but with a difference on my Earth. I swallowed. It was you, Mom and Dad, who died in that motorhome accident, not me. His grip tightened on my hands. He took a deep breath, the wheels in his mind slowly putting all the pieces together. I guess that could explain a lot, but that doesn't explain how you got here, or how I saw you turn into one of them, or how you appeared out of nowhere and kicked that armored giant ninja down. Couple of months before the accident, back on my old world, I did a school project where I had to write a letter to an imaginary genie. Asking what you'd wish for? He cut me off. I nodded. He remembered that? His eyes welled up. I still have that letter. A tear rolled down my cheek. Well, a while back, I got my wish. I'm now a traveler. Well, the traveler, in fact. It's my job to travel to and from parallel Earths, along with the ability, I also possess the powers to transform myself, hence the baldness and garden color. He laughed. I'm not your real Roxanne, though. Your sister is dead, and so is my brother. I had to give it to him straight. Any other way, I would feel guilty about the actual blonde Roxanne who'd belonged to this parallel. He stared at me before grabbing the sides of my head and planting a kiss on it. My sister is right here. You may not exactly be her, but I see this as a second chance for both of us. I pulled him into a tight hug, and this time he hugged me back. Hey, green is a good color, though, quirked in Donatello sarcastically. You guys feel strangely familiar. He squinted at the turtles over my shoulders. This is when my eyes widened. No. The flyers, he exclaimed, pushing me back gently. Donatello, is that you? Donnie just smiled, revealing his gap. Michelangelo, Leonardo? Then he looked directly at Raphael. That makes you Raphael, he pointed accusingly. I guess it does. What of it? Sparked Raph. But that means... He looked back between me and Raphael. You and my little sister are... Yeah, we are, Raphael blushed, suddenly embarrassed by my brother's grilling. But you're he pointed to Raph, and she's I cut him off. She's a dimensional crossing being, with the ability to shapeshift and teleport to... She's not exactly human either. I addressed myself in the third person. He crossed my arm. She's still my sister. Then he made the I'm watching you sign, bringing 2 fingers in front of his eyes and pointing to Raphael. We dropped my brother off about a mile from the show building. There was a bunch of cops where the red, blue, and white lights flashing, parked outside the trailer. His wife must have called the cops and filed a missing persons report. What do I tell them? He asked. I smiled. Fangirls. Kidnapped by fangirls. He laughed and pulled me into another hug. I miss you so much. I mumbled into his chest. Ditto, kin. He squeezed me harder. Felix, I love you. Remember that, okay? I love you too, little sis. Don't be a stranger, Roxy. And besides, that's one of the flying act you got there. If you ever figure out how to turn them human again, you're welcome back in the ring any time. I watched as my long-lost and now-found brother walked away. I climbed back into the vehicles, tears streaming down my face. Chapter 51. Mikey managed to get the Shellraiser out of the busy downtown area without killing any innocent New York pedestrians. Nobody spoke a word the whole way home. Master Splinter bandaged his leg as Donnie fell asleep against April. Politely, she didn't wake him, although his heavy turtle head probably weighed a ton on her tiny shoulder. We dropped her off a few blocks from her aunt's apartment, behind yet another abandoned factory, in order to keep out of sight of her neighbors who might grow suspicious of a 15-year-old girl stepping out of a giant armored and wheeled subway car. Luckily, she had only been missing a few hours, as the Shredder had kidnapped her last minute as a backup plan. She isn't hurt, but I know once she explains to her dad that she had been kidnapped yet again, he will probably never let her out of the house ever again. I laughed at that thought. Getting kidnapped by Shredder is something she better get used to, because if this world is anything like the original, getting kidnapped by the Shredder or some other evil foe is what April O'Neil does best. Raphael sat beside me, and his head nodding up and down, trying to keep himself awake. I reached over and gently squeezed his hand. I'm okay, you can sleep. He smiled back and returned the squeeze. Leonardo and Chiari stared at us, then shot each other the most devastatingly heartbreaking look ever. That was some real Romeo and Juliet style stuff right there. Shakespeare would be wiping away tears, but like in Romeo and Juliet had just found out they were siblings. Should I tell them? Nah, I'm going to enjoy this a bit longer. Sue me. And besides, I need my solid proof to back up my theory. Chiari, I'm sorry, I didn't know. Believe me, Leo sighed. Leonardo, she cut him off. I know, there's no need to apologize. Her eyes downcast, unable to look at him. Mikey shut the engine down. Ah, home sweet sewer, he announced sarcastically. We finally reached the lair. Is it true, Father? Is Chiari really your daughter? Leonardo finally spoke up and asked the question that was on everyone's mind. His voice clearly begged for it all to be just a bad dream. That finally the one girl he had fallen for, and who actually returned his feelings, was the daughter of the man they called father. The old rat sighed. Yes, my sons. Well, my children. He looked at Chiari. I don't know what tale the Shredder has spun you, but I swear on the grave of my beloved Tang Shen that this is the truth. Chiari winced at the mention of her mother's name. Oraku and I were like brothers once. We trained together, fought together, brothers in every way except blood. But when we both fell in love with the same girl, it sparked a rivalry between us. And when she chose me, it drove him over the edge. He was no longer my friend. I married that girl, and later we had a daughter. Her name was Miwa. He took a framed picture off his shell and handed it to Chiari. Poor girl, her whole world had crumbled around her. She had found out that her mutant boyfriend is actually technically her brother, and the man she was raised to believe had brutally murdered her mother was actually her real father, and a giant mutant rat at that. Somebody get me some popcorn. It was a black and white family portrait of Hamato Yushi, Tang Shan, and an infant Miwa. I have this picture, but it's partly burned and you cannot see who the man is. I always believed it to be my father. The Okachaki, but now I see otherwise. She gently caressed the image of Tang Xian in her fingertips before handing the picture back. Master Spencer reshelved it. One day, while I was away in a fury of jealous vengeance, Araku broke into my home, murdered your mother, and I had always believed he had killed my beautiful daughter as well. But that night, last month, that I went to face him to rescue the turtles in April, he told me what he had done, taken you as his own, and raised you to believe it was I who had slain her. So, to answer your question, my son, yes, Chiari is Miwa, my daughter. Leonardo stared at the ground, happy for his father, but crushed for himself. So I guess that makes you our sister. Mikey turned to face Chiari. I laughed. My inner fangirl was now happy and satisfied. I had finally gotten to watch this scene. I'm the ultimate fangirl. That's not going to change just because I'm a traveler now. No, I wouldn't miss this scene just because I'm actually in it. No way. What's so funny? Chiari glared at me. Not exactly, I replied with a knowing smile. Then I popped my elbow onto Donnie's shoulder. Donnie, if you would be so kind. He stared at me confused. Then it hit him, and he threw his hands to the top of his head in realization. That strand of hair, that was hers. I had completely forgotten about it. I put it in the analyzer when you gave it to me, and then went to sleep. I forgot to check the results. He dashed off to the lab. What is he talking about? Raphael crossed his arms in impatience. He's going to get the DNA results of a strand of hair I took from Chiari to test and compare it to you for. I pointed around to the turtles. Wait, you knew? Leonardo suspiciously accused. Duh, I exclaimed, shrugging my shoulders. All-knowing and all-powerful, remember? I joked teasingly. Well then, your powerfulness. Why did you need a DNA test then? Mikey mocked me. Good point. I didn't know for sure, but I do have a hunch. I just need proof, and when the traveler has a hunch, you don't question the traveler. I feigned superiority, cocking my trademark grin. The sound of something printing went off, and less than 10 seconds later, Donatello skidded to a stop beside me, out of breath with excitement, clutching a long piece of paper in his hand. This is amazing. I've never even thought of analyzing our DNA and comparing it before. These nucleic acids are unlike anything I've ever seen. The words bubbled out of him so fast I barely caught any of that. I grabbed him by the shoulders and gently shook him. English, Donnie. Dumb it down. Not all of us speak NASA. He looked at me strangely. But NASA doesn't do DNA. I put my hands on my hips, shaking my head. Oh, sarcasm. I get it. Sorry. He then started pacing, running his hand over his head, then staring intently at a sheet of paper. Okay, how do I complex genealogy to a group of people who have never even seen a science book in their lives? He whispered, probably louder than intended, to himself. Hey, I heard that, and I'll have you know that I remember my last exam. That I'm failing science. Never mind. Please go on. I chuckled. Okay, it's like this. He finally stopped pacing. Leonardo waited anxiously beside Chiari, who was biting her lip. Father, we know you love you, and we all consider you our true father. But it is true that you're not our biological birth father, and there are two small normal turtles out there who actually created us. He set the paper down. You see, I always assumed the mutant process the DNA was altered to 50% to the last molecule the subject came into contact with. But now I see that it's untrue. The mutagen, being an alien substance, works differently than anything any Earth scientist could comprehend. It doesn't alter the original makeup of the exact DNA of the original host. Then he scratched his head. But then again, it does. Man, I was really on a roll there. Less technical terms. More answers, Donatello, cried out Leonardo anxiously. It alters it to about 10%, so about 10% Hamantayashi, and since Chiari is 50%, that makes her 5% genetically related to us. So that makes her our... He tilted his head back and began silently counting off his fingers. 6th cousin, not a half-sister. Hardly related. Oh, thank God. Chiari twisted and buried her head in Leonardo's neck. He laughed and clasped his arms around her back. She grabbed the sides of his head and kissed him hard. Master Splinters raised his eyebrows, staring at his children, then proceeded to roll his eyes, chuckling. I've been wanting to do that since I first put a blade to your neck. She laughed, happy beyond words. You were right, Mikey nudged me in the rib. Never question the traveler. I winked back. The sensei went to bed first. I've learned over the time I've spent here that he is one of those morning people. The whole early to bed, early to rise thing. After raiding the fridge and gorging ourselves on leftover pizza and cereal, it quieted down, and the exhaustion finally setting in. I don't remember falling asleep, but I woke up on one of the dining room chairs, and a strange feeling had awoken me, like an urgent need to be somewhere or do something. A loud thump sounded out from down the hallway. Groggily, I stood up and headed towards it, passing Leonardo and Chiari, who were asleep, snuggling against each other on my couch. My heart warmed at the sight. Their contas laid out next to each other on the coffee table. Chiari had her head against Leonardo's shoulder, his arm wrapped securely around her shoulders innocently. I peeked into Mikey's room as his door was open. He was sound asleep, snoring loudly. Another loud thump. Passing Donatello's lap, I saw that he was asleep, head laid on his desk, that could not be comfortable. I stepped inside and gently shook him awake, grabbed his arm, and walked the half-asleep genius across the hall to his room. He's definitely not going to remember that in the morning. He was totally sleepwalking. If it's not Don or Michelangelo, there's only one possible brother left. Pushing Raphael's strangely unlocked door open, I saw what was causing the sound. He punched the small portable punching sandbag that hung in the corner of his room again before he noticed me. Are you okay? Was his first sentence. Me? I'm fine. My couch has been taken, but fine. But I should ask you the same thing. I expressed my worry. I crossed the room towards him and leaned my back against the wall. He just punched again, like just looking at me hurt him. What's wrong with him? Did I do something? You know you can tell me anything, right? I placed my hand on his shoulder and squeezed it. His eyes still downcast. He didn't answer. Is it me? Fear was starting to take a root in the pit of my stomach. He smiled lightly, reaching up and grabbing my hand off of his shoulder. Turning to face me, he gently placed his other hand on top of it. His giant's hand made mine look like a small child's. No, God, no, Roxy, you're more than perfect. His words rushed out, taking away my fear. Good, you scared me there for a second. I braced him in a loose hug, sighing in relief. He smiled into my hair and sweetly kissed me in the forehead. What is it about my head that makes people kiss it? My brother does it as well. It's a good thing I don't mind. I actually quite enjoy it. No, it's just, I can't stay on feeling helpless and watching people suffer. And listening to you scream for hours on end, the crying doing who knows what to you, I could do nothing but stand there shackled to a wall. He shuddered. I should have been able to do something because that killed me inside, not being able to save you. I put my hand on his cheek. Don't do that to yourself, Raphael. It's not your fault. Standing here right now is proof that it takes a bit more than some shock therapy to take me down. And besides, you and brothers did save me, and that's what really counts. Shock therapy? You mean they electrocuted you? He cried out in rage. Shh, you'll wake the neighbors, I hushed. I'm fine. A little worse for the wear, but I heal at a superhuman rate, so no need to start looking for headstones because I'm still alive. That tune popped in my head. Yeah, staying alive, I sang as I made disco movements with my hands. He laughed and pulled me into a tender kiss. It was different. Usually our kisses are pretty intense, if not a little rough. I liked him that way. I could tell he did too. Not that I was complaining. As I closed my eyes and returned the sweet kiss, I pulled back with a mischievous smile plastered to my face. Placing my hand against the center of his shelled chest, I pushed him towards the bed as I morphed into my turtle self. What are you doing? He asked nervously, as he scooted back and sat up against the headboard. Experimenting, I grinned as I climbed into his lap and clamped my mouth down against his, muffling his protests. Still kissing him, I untied the mask from the back of his head and then pulled back to look at him. Gah! I'm naked, he gasped sarcastically before lifting me off of his lap and laying me down beside him and kissing me again. Jeez.
Don't you have to babysit at 6?
No. This kiss soon turned into a makeout, as I hooked my leg around his, drilling kisses down his neck. I placed a love bite at the base of his neck, where his shoulder connected to it. Afterward, I laid against his plastron. I found out that is what the chest plate is actually called. Content just listening to his steady breathing. It felt weird to lay on my shell, so I transformed back. My couch has been taken by the star-crossed lovers. Do you mind if I crash here tonight? No reply. I tilted my head back to find him completely contently asleep. I'll take that as a yes. Chapter 52. I appeared in the solid white hallways in this space between dimensions. The goddess in front of me smiled. Her smile was filled with warmth. Just looking at that beautiful expression made the whole room feel as if it was bright with color. You did well, my traveler. You have pleased your patriarch. She beamed down at me proudly. Those words filled my entire being with a sense of happiness and accomplishment like I'd never felt before. I felt a warmth radiate from my right hand. I looked down at my ring and it was glowing. It was happy. My ring was happy. Thank you, Your Majesty. You ought to honor me with your praise. I curtsied, grabbing the sides of my flushed white room. With that being said, you must be going soon, she reminded me kindly, taking into consideration how attached I had grown to this one particular world. I sighed. I didn't want to leave my friends, my brother, or Raph. But I already knew that I had to. I know I feel the universe pulling me away. I've sensed it the moment I've solved problems I wanted to fix here. I feel it calling me home, the strongest urges to go out amongst the universe. She smiled at me like she had some sort of inside joke. You're a traveler. It's in your blood. My chest began to ache with sadness at the thought of leaving them. I don't want to leave. I'm finally happy, but it's so hard to fight like a hunger. She placed her hand gently on my shoulder as she spoke, the bells on her bracelet jangling like a sweet, sad song. I understand, child. I'm the goddess of travel. There's one thing I do understand. It's the pain of leaving loved ones behind. I was almost in tears, but I contained myself out of respect for her. So I swallowed them down. I'm going to miss them so much. I squeezed my eyes shut, trying not to cry. She started laughing. Her laughter grew louder and louder till the whole white dimension seemed to bubble with it. You're a circus girl, a true nomad. Should know this better than anyone, my dear. Just because you leave doesn't mean you can never come back. Her laughter echoed as the white space faded to gray, then solid black. Only one thought I was happily retreating into myself in my mind as I drifted away. I can come back. I can come back. The scent of something delicious woke me. Half awake, I tried to sit up and stretch, but found that I couldn't. Opening my eyes, I saw that Raphael's very heavily, muscular green arm was pinning me down. He must have rolled over onto me during the night, because he's probably not used to sharing a bed with another person. I reached down and tried unsuccessfully to detach him from me. Where do you think you're going? He smiled mumbly, groggily, with his eyes still shut. Breakfast. I'm starving, I answered, sitting up. Oh, no, you don't, he chuckled and jerked me back down, turning me towards him, embracing me. You've got an appetite to rival Mikey's. I'd hate to see the showdown you two would get into for the last slice of pizza. Raphael, after 16 of watching Mikey's love affair with pizza, even I know better than to go down that road. Giggling, I snuggled my head into his neck. It's funny, I just remembered something. He rested his chin on my head. What? I muffled into his neck. Tomorrow's our birthday. Well, we call it Mutant Day, I finished for him. Yeah, I know all about that. Several different versions, in fact. I thought back to all the TMNT origin backstories. I sighed, gathered up the courage to tell him I was leaving. Raphael, there's something I need to tell you. He pulled me closer, reaching up and grabbing hold of the edge of his plastron. Ridiculously named, if you ask me. I think I'll just stick to chest plate. You're leaving. I looked up at him, wondering how the hell could he know. Yes, but how did you know? He tucked a lock of brown hair that had fallen by my face behind my ear. Last night you were talking in your sleep. You kept mumbling, I don't want to leave Raph. Then you mumbled the names of my brother, and even your own brother, but it flatters me that you picked me first. He chuckled. Wait, why was he so happy? I would be going away, remember? Then you started smiling, and I'm taking just one of those devastatingly gorgeous smiles, and you kept repeating, I'll be back, I can come back, really excitedly, so I put 2 and 2 together. I cut him off. And got 3? I smirked sarcastically. Ha ha ha, cute, Roxanne, real cute. Then he continued, I figured you had to go off and do more, well, whatever weird, wacky voodoo stuff that a traveler does. But no worries, I know you'll be back soon, for a fact. He spoke almost tauntingly. What makes you so sure? I cocked him a grin, raising an eyebrow. If I know you, it sounds and is like that, and is like to think that I do, then you won't leave all this. He gestured up and down his body. Alone for a very long, trust me. You will be back. I laughed and kissed him. He pulled back, chuckling. Slow down there. Give me a chance to at least wake up before you send his pheromones on a rage. You know what pheromones are? Disbelief filled the question. He sat up and shuddered. Donnie, sex ed when was 10. Don't ask. He blushed. Getting up, he grabbed my hand and led me to the living room towards that glorious smell. It was Mikey cooking breakfast in the kitchen. He set down a plate of miraculously unburned scrambled eggs onto the table before walking towards us. Leonardo and Chiari were just waking up on my couch. Let it go, Roxanne. Just let the couch go. Mikey eyed us suspiciously, then smirked knowingly. Look at both of you. Rough night? He jabbed playfully into his brother's side. He tilted his head and stared at the base of Raphael's neck. Funny, I don't remember seeing that bruise yesterday. What is that? The orange-clad turtle wondered at the brownish-purple love bite. I blushed. Raphael saw it as well, staring oddly down at it. Leonardo unwrapped himself carefully and stood up. That, my dear, unfortunately single brother, is what I just found out last night is called a hickey. He tilted his head right below his jawline, where the base of his head met his neck, revealing an identical brown and purple bruise. Up top, Raph. He high-fived his brother. Oh yeah, Raphael grinned right back. They stood there for a second, examining each other's battle scars. I winked at Curie. She smiled and shook her head. Mine's bigger, announced Leonardo proudly. Raphael sighed and dramatically placed his hands on his brother's shoulder. Bro, me and you both know that isn't true. I laughed, rolling my eyes. Boys will be boys. I knew I was going to have to leave, but I'm not leaving just yet. Chapter 53. I was awakened by the sound of someone walking by me. Opening my eyes just slightly, I found myself in a strange place. I was in a large, king-size bed of my room, tucked safely in my black silk sheets, my beautiful collections of painting of feudal Japan adorning the walls. I was in an abandoned subway terminal, red bricks giving the place a dark, earthy feel. Then I remembered. I was laying against Leonardo's shoulder on the couch. He was sleeping quite peacefully, and had his arm wrapped protectively around my shoulder. The sound of a door creaking open caught my attention. Lifting my head off the sleeping mutant, I looked behind me towards the wall. Roxanne slipped inside the scientist turtle's laboratory. At this hour? What for? My curiosity got the best of me. Donatello. His name is Donatello. I reminded myself. He is family now. I must stop putting up my walls. I waited and heard a sleepy groan, some scuffling from inside the lab. 5 seconds later, the girl was feeding the drowsy purple-clad ninja across the hall. Donnie, you should know better than to work yourself till you pass out on your desk, she scolded. She scolded him disapprovingly, on one hand on his wrist and the other under his arm, keeping him upright, as she slowly walked him into what must have been his room. I could clearly tell he was sleepwalking. A few seconds later, she closed the door behind her, smiling, shaking her head. She didn't notice me watching her. Leonardo started to stir beside me. She opened another door and peeked inside. Something that sounded like a large animal being strangled cried out from the room. My eyes went wide. Okay, just so you know, that whole part right there was Chiari's point of view, and I'm assuming this is Leonardo's point of view now. Chiari's beautiful face looked a little frightened by the deafening sound that I've grown up with. It's just Mikey, I reassured her. Is there something wrong with him? I sensed hints of compassion in her voice. So my ice queen does have a heart. I looked up and saw Roxanne peeping into his room. Her eyes widened a bit, and then she smiled and rolled them. She really did have a soft spot for Michelangelo. I mean, she showed up, and he'd here practically worshipping him. She didn't hear our whispers, but I doubt you could hear anything over that deafening snore. Such compassion. Chiari's mouth gaped open just the slightest. I've never known anyone like her. Outside, she's all sarcasm and fire. She's got the guts to call me a lesbian. But beneath is such kindness. She believes in people even when they don't see it themselves. Roxanne gently closed the door and started walking to Hothead's room. Why is she going in there? Chiari asked. I facepalmed, remembering this was her couch to sleep on. I think we sort of took her bed, I told Chiari. Oh, well, don't worry about it. Something tells me she'll have a much better night in there. I chuckled. She's like that. She becomes some sort of a therapist around here, I whispered. Chiari faced me and pulled her knees up onto the couch, crossing them. Helping everyone with their problems, listening, you have no idea how much it helps just to have someone listen to you. She even restored my faith in you, I explained as I slid my hand under hers. Me? Chiari asked, astonished. You lost your faith in me? Her eyes looked slightly hurt. I don't know if I did completely, but after you kidnapped April and my brothers constantly chipping away at me, I swallowed a guilty look. But she believed you never did stop. She told me you were something special, but of course, I already knew that. I smiled a bit and grabbed her other hand. She shot me the most beautiful smile. It sent my heart pounding. The door to Raphael's doors creaked shut. She turned around and lay against my plastron. Strands of her raven hair against my cheek. It smelled intoxicating. So, Roxanne Raphael, huh? She asked as if it were a joke. I didn't see that coming either. Personally, I thought her a bit too refined for the likes of him. I rested my chin on her head. That's quite funny coming from you, she chuckled. Why? I inquired. Because, then aren't you a little too refined for the likes of me? She tilted her head back to look at me. No, of course not, Chiari, I stuttered. Good. We'll always be drawn to darkness, my dear goody-goody one. She is attracted to Raphael, just like you are attracted to me in my darkness. I am not goody-goody, I retorted back, slightly insulted. She turned around, her chest against mine, lip hovering just inches away from my mouth. I gulped, nervous. Don't worry, Leonardo. You and your always doing the right thing motto is quite adorable. She brought her mouth down hard on mine. I started to squirm slightly and pulled back in shock. What's wrong? I won't hurt you, her hands gripping my shoulder. I'm sorry, Chiari. I managed to get out, my body still trembling. All these feelings, I couldn't process them. I thought back to the time Donnie found the sex ed book and decided to read it out loud. That just made me shudder. Don't ever think about that again, I told myself. The first time I kissed you, you were so sad and beautiful, it just came so natural to me. And the second time we kissed, you sort of just pounced on me. But now that we're alone, I'm terrified. She smiled and laughed quietly, then traced the side of my face with her thumb. Would you believe me if I told you I was scared as well? Believe Chiari? No, I laughed. You'd be right, she teased. Let's just try this again, slowly. She stared down at me intently and gently kissed me. After a little guidance, I began to kiss her back. Fireworks everywhere. My whole body reacted, and I wrapped my arms around her back, pulling her even closer, feeling a need to have no distance at all between us. The next thing I knew, she was sliding her tongue into my mouth. I instantly went into panic mode, but fought to keep my body still and let her do her thing, no matter how much it freaked me out. I really wish I still had this I still had that see then do power like when I was human. Yeah, that would come in handy right about now. I wonder if Raphael had this much trouble kissing Roxanne. She pulled back and laughed. Leonardo Yashi, great with a concept, but not so great with women, she taunted me. That stung a little. I put my hand in her hair. There never were any other women, Chiari. It's only ever been you. She melted and buried her head in my neck. Oh, Leonardo, she muffled into my neck. That nailed the line. Nailed it. Captain Ryan would be proud. She started kissing me on the neck. I tensed up. What are you doing? I asked, slightly frightened. Just trust me. So I did. Whoa. It felt amazing. She trailed upwards, and when she reached the side of my neck, my body reacted on its own, moving closer. I swear I could feel her smile. Then she did something that completely threw me off guard. She started to suck on the spot. I moaned. Did I actually just moan? Yeah. This girlfriend stuff? Amazing. Back to Chiari's point of view. He moaned. Finally, a reaction other than fear. I had found his sweet spot. I continued on, teasing that sensitive area of his neck. His arms tightened around my back, and his head tilted up, eyes closed. Ah, he sighed. That feels incredible. I pulled back, and in the dim light of the room, I saw a well-sized purple bruise had formed on his neck. I'm sorry, I think I left a hickey. I had to use more pressure because your skin is thicker. I didn't realize I would leave a mark. He looked confused. A what? A hickey. It's a type of bruise you get from having your neck kissed. Still on top of him, I reached into my pocket and pulled out my compact, opening up and handing the mirror to him. He looked at it strangely, moving the mirror around to see it from different angles. That is so cool. He smiled with excitement. Well, Chiara, you've branded me. I'm yours now. He smirked confidently. I blushed. Grabbing my waist, he flipped me over so I was below him. I raised an eyebrow at the sudden burst of confidence. Chiari, if there's one thing about me that's true, ask anyone. I'm a fast learner. Then he kissed me. Okay. I'm going to stop there, and I will read the last of it in the next video. Alrighty, peace out, Knights.